Did Donald Trump just show his hand on overclassification? I mean, we know from the whistleblower that there is a server that for normal presidents holds operational intelligence, really classified stuff. But for Donald Trump, it just hides. It's where the lawyer on the NSC staff sticks embarrassing stuff Donald Trump says to foreign leaders. And it seemed that Trump there just revealed that they classify every conversation he has, whether it's justifiably classifiable or not.
Nicolle, Donald Trump thinks that classified information is what you read in the back pages of a newspaper. He has no idea what classified information is, but we do know that there has been an intent by the Trump administration to try and classify information that they think is harmful. Look, John Bolton showing up on the scene now with the book is like a firefighter showing up at a building that's already burned with a fire hose and saying, hey, guys, I got this. Like, it's too late. So I frankly don't really, care to read what's in the book, but I do want to read Fiona Hill's book or Lieutenant Colonel Vindman's book or Bill Taylor's book, or Marie Yovanovitch's book, the people who had the courage to show up and do the right thing instead of letting our democracy burn before their eyes.
And I mean, I think that is the current against which he's going to swim. And I think that, and John Bolton probably would hate to hear this, but he'll find himself without a constituency. He's burned the bridges to the Trump world. You hear right there, Trump, arms folded. He's going to get his bouncer, Bill Barr, the nation's attorney general, to get him legally. And I think you voiced the opinion of certainly a lot of our viewers that he wasted his opportunity to do the right thing, to have the back and corroborate the accounts of Fiona Hill and Marie Yovanovitch and Colonel Vindman and many, many others. So George Conway attributes it to a gross miscalculation and faith that he placed in Senate Republicans actually wanting to hear from witnesses like himself. What do you think of that theory?
Well, we asked him twice. He was asked during the House investigation, and then he threatened to take us to court. And we didn't have time to fight in the courts as the president was trying to rig the upcoming election. We felt like we had enough evidence. His could have, of course, corroborated that evidence. And then he was asked to give an affidavit by Chairman Schiff during the impeachment trial in the Senate. And both times he walked away from his duty. But just imagine, had he had the courage to come forward and the president would have been removed, we could have seen a COVID crisis that was not as bad as it is right now. We could have seen, perhaps some healing in this country as we continue to recognize Black Lives Matter and we need police reforms. Instead, John Bolton, one of the few persons that could have brought true accountability to this president, really abdicated that duty.
Tell me about the book you've written about impeachment.
Well, Nicolle, it chronicles, what we did, the call to action of standing up to this president. It's a tribute to Speaker Pelosi, Chairman Schiff, who had the courage to move forward on it, but also the heroes who did risk their livelihood and their jobs to come forward. It also really condemns the Republican colleagues of mine who put their own jobs forward instead of the job of holding the president accountable. And the people who told me so many times that they were afraid of standing up to the president because, as one said, when he tweets, he wins. But we're not helpless, as we saw in impeachment. When you stand up to a bully, he backs down. We may not have removed him from office, but Ukraine did get the aid that he was trying to hold back only once our investigation begun.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.